Hey guys, we're back. Sorry about that. We got cut off for a moment, but now I'm back here with Miguel Penna. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. I gotta let you do it and give it your own justice. But
Call me the jalapeno if you want.
no, well, because you're so hot, we gotta keep you with that fresh name.
Yeah, I already got your other video taken down because of my mouth. So yeah, we'll try and keep it a little bit more tame. I promise.
All right, we're gonna have a chili pepper mouth tonight, and not a jalapeno mouth.
There you go. Well, it's
And
always
then
going to
we
be a
still
jalapeno mouth.
and then we
Yeah,
still
that's
have
just me.
Michael Macintosh here, and we wanted to dive into where we got cut off. You were just kind of explaining to us basically what the purpose was for originally starting your notebook and why you started. You said it was because of your accident prior, and you used it for kind of a healing process as much as anything, and then it started
Yeah.
to develop into a lot more. And yeah, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. Yeah. So my wife and I, who are both ministers, actually, we became ministers the same year. Um, so which is great for both of us because rather than have like a therapist, we can kind of help each other because we both have this sort of focal point, which is our beliefs that we both share. And so and we both come from military families, interestingly, which we didn't really think about, but it's a fact. So we can and she can look in me for things that maybe affect me because of that, and help me to figure out what those are and to sort of pull them out through, especially regression therapy. And so we've been doing a lot of that since the first session, which was in December 18th, 2017, up to the last session, which was April 28th, 2021. So yeah, but there's a lot of stuff. We basically uncovered a lot of stuff, and it's really helped me because a lot of this stuff was, as far as I know, memory suppressed, and it was because of that. I had difficulty moving forward and healing because I wasn't even aware of the existence of these things. So I guess doing this is kind of multifaceted, but ultimately beneficial. And I think that there are probably many people out there who have had similar experiences to me who haven't done this and haven't really healed or moved forward from their
Regardless of the situations that they were, because each one's going to have a traumatic situation, how is it that you were able to move past the trauma? You had to recognize the trauma and then be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Were you able to identify specific factors that were repeating and that sort of thing? Or how did the healing process work? Because it's this mind over matter type of interaction of the soul feeding the body. And if you're having problems in one area, it's going to cause problems in the other. And that's what I'm trying to find out more.
Yeah, well, each individual is unique ultimately, and everything affects everybody differently. And what might be, I suppose, a huge deal to one person can be basically, minor or insignificant or nothing really to another person, and what can be a big deal to some people is nothing to other people. So it's all
About
it's about,
perspective.
yeah, it's in individuality. It's kind of about that really. And I mean, from the time we're young, we're all kind of put into these boxes anyway, and we don't really belong in them. We are all ultimately individuals, and everything is on an individual basis in reality. But society doesn't allow us to work that way. And I've kind of realized that too, because there's some stuff in here that I've figured out that is, I suppose, to a lot of people would be a huge deal, but to me, it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, you know. I don't, it's not really. I can kind of just like, here it is. Okay, it's over there. I don't need to deal with it anymore. I've processed it, and it's out, and I can kind of like, you know, I can look at it and go, that's a past experience. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to think about it anymore. There's nothing I can do about it. You can't change the past. And
And having that many exciting events, I was going to say, with having that many exciting events in your life, you would almost grow kind of numb to it. I could see how you from, you know, a personal perspective, and us outsiders looking at it, like, you give me one chance to time travel, and that'll be my story I'm telling everybody for the rest of my life. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be one of the biggest experiences for me that I can imagine, no
Yeah.
matter where or when I went.
And I probably will be, I suppose, but frankly, I just want to be, you know, making new music and working on a new album or something right now. That's what I want to be doing, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm still talking about this stuff because I do want to help people, you know, and I do realize that there's a lot of people out there who really need someone or a group of people to come forward and actually offer this information, and that will, you know, doing so will probably help a lot of people. And I just think that will make a better situation in the world, basically, because it seems like a lot of people have been negatively affected by this kind of stuff, and for whatever reason, fear is a big factor. Fear of being different, fear of not fitting into that compartment, that box, is a big reason why people just kind of avoid it.
Well, some people avoid it completely, and that's one of the reasons for teenage abstaining.
Yeah.
The problem is that they fear not being part of it because they can't survive without their group, and that's a social instinct that we as humans have. Why? Because individually we can't survive in this world, even regardless of what we've converted into.
Yeah. Well, the truth is that we can, but we've been taught that we can't, and frankly, we will probably survive better if we are more individualistic, in my opinion.
Nowadays, yes, not 100,000 years ago. 100,000 years ago, if you were out by yourself, the lions would kill you in the middle of the night.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen anymore. You know, we have AK-47s and everything else. So.
We still got people getting taken out in their beds.
Yeah. Well, those are some dumb people, if you ask me. You know, but I'm not trying to be judgmental or critical of people, but you know, I mean.
Well, yeah, that's the guy that went camping and got attacked by a bear because he kept the Twinkies open next to him in his tent.
Yeah, because they don't think the bears are out there. I mean, they think they're like in the middle of their living room.
That's a naiveness that humans have when you're only seeing animals in the zoo, and that's the only time that you can really go to see.
That's what I'm talking about. Now, you get a group of 2 or 3 people with whatever caliber, whatever you choose. Even I like crossbows myself. They're quieter. But my personal favorite.
I don't know. They're as quiet as the person carrying them. So I think it's a dual effort.
If I have to, I don't necessarily have to be loud.
Oh no, I'm just joking with you.
So, yeah, but still, hopefully we won't get to the Mad Max days, and that's one of my concerns, because the way that they're trying to drive things now, it can end up in a Mad Max situation, or at least that's what they want everybody to believe, because holy shit, it's dog eat dog. And what happens when we got half the population gone? And not from,
Yeah, but when you really think about it, that's sort of like misinformation and control tactic, agenda stuff, and then they create an atmosphere of fear, and everybody then becomes focused and dependent on that person who is promoting that fear, and it turns them into a sort of hero savior type of figure, when that is just not the truth whatsoever. It's often just predatory.
and it's just conjecture on their part, and for the most part anyway. Why?
I mean,
Because fear sells. You can control people through fear. See, that's one of the things that I want to be able to inspire people to do what they need to do to get out of that circle of dependence, of fear, of being indebted to the banking system and being dependent on the system to survive, because they should find their individuality and their own voice and their way through this. And great for the people that have found it, but there's a lot of people that are still looking and can't find a way. And that's, always got to be our focus in helping those people a hand up, like they say, teaching them how to fish instead of, giving them fish, which is what the fucking socialists always do. It dumbs people down over generations.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I could never be a Democrat, but that's another subject.
I don't know if Jake, you are our guide on this aspect. What can we actually talk about that won't get us in trouble?
We can talk about politics as much as we want. We just, all we have to do is most of the time just phrase that these are our opinions. We're not experts in these fields. We didn't go to school for politics. That's not, if we were to talk about anything political, it's because, you could misdefine a word like socialism and go the wrong way with it and tell somebody it is something that it's not. But if people don't think you're an expert to start with, then you don't have anything to lose, really.
That's my problem, that I was working on a master's in economics. So yeah, the terms are important and they do matter. So I try not to make mistakes. That's how I got accepted to the universities I got accepted to, because you look at the fucking details. Now, everybody's opinion, no matter how much of an expert, is merely their opinion. And many times these experts are paid off and they're peddling propaganda told to them by somebody else. And it's not necessarily even their opinion. It's just what they're told to say. Okay. And we trust these individuals. So what is the question of trust? I'm a guy in the middle of my own fucking forest. Great. Don't trust me. Don't take my word for it. Fucking fine. But at the same time, I know of which I speak. Trust me.
I feel like the craziest thing is it's almost like this thing you have to do when you're presenting a video on your channel is you have to raise your hand publicly and say, hey, I want to practice my freedom of speech. I just want to let everybody know I'm just going to practice it just a little bit. Don't yell at me. And
that's freedom.
That's what you're doing. You're saying, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just want to talk for a little bit. Please don't yell at me for talking.
They're going to yell at you anyway because they like yelling at people.
I've been in newspapers in every country in the world, and it kind of comes with the territory. It's like people are going to be mad.
Going to hate.
Oh yeah, he who holds the platform decides who's on it.
The more people become exposed to what your message is, especially if there's truth to it, it'll just become more hated by a lot of people because they're automatically averse to the truth, and they're even programmed to fight against it. So it's kind of like
that's
you kind of just have to expect that. But you can go along with them and not be part of the solution, and that's on you to do that. Ultimately, that's not really the I don't believe that the right way to go, and I think that's the coward's path. But I think the right thing and
Telling the truth is the coward's path.
oh no, going along with the people who are
Oh,
fighting against the truth.
yeah,
Right.
called sheeple.
So
No, never.
yeah, and there's so many of those, of course. But the right thing to do is to, when you recognize that something is the truth and it's beneficial, is to put it out there, and that's what I'm doing. And that's
That's
what
what we're all doing, buddy, because that's what we got to do. I mean, that's what we were put here in this time and place specifically to do.
there's this one experience in particular that I really wanted to talk about, which is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I don't really care,
That's on
because
Jake to mute you or not.
I experienced it and I wrote it down.
Michael, if these are your personal experiences and you want to
Mhm.
talk about them, I wouldn't mute you. You can say whatever you want as long as you don't tell me that you did some crime. Then I'm going to have to report you.
I didn't. I don't know if
I'm
other
just
people
joking.
involved.
I'm just saying that's the only time I would have to interject. I would love to hear your story. That's why you're on here.
Well, I was just a child, so I think I was probably about 15, actually. So wait a minute. Actually, I was at the beginning of it. I was 12. So would you like to hear about it?
Yeah, I would definitely like to hear about it. You're 12. Go ahead.
It was written down on August 14th, 2020, while I was doing a memory regression therapy session.
That's
I recall.
when you recalled it.
Yep.
Okay.
I recalled that. Where does this start? In 7th grade. This goes back to something that happened to me in 7th grade, which was 1987. I was in English class at BB Middle School, BEEBE Middle School in Malden, Massachusetts, where I lived in that city. I discovered on a day, I don't know the exact date, but it was in 1987, that there is a secret facility underneath the school. Because while I was in my English class that particular day, I don't know the date, I didn't recall that, but 2 men came into my class to get me. They were both very serious. This was a school that a lot of the teachers at were actually veterans. They were, Vietnam veterans, World War II veterans, I believe, maybe some of the older ones. Very sort of military culture. It seems that maybe, a bunch of them had gotten their jobs because they were military buddies and this kind of thing. But these 2 guys came. They were people who I figured out later were indeed, one of them was Barack Obama, and the other was Andy Bishago. So they came to my class and they talked to my teacher. They obviously informed the teacher that they needed to take me out of the class. So they did. They asked me to come with them, and they took me to the basement in the school where this facility was. And then I was teleported. There's a teleporter in the basement of that school to, at least there was then. I believe it actually has been demolished since then, which is another interesting cover-up sort of thing. But they took me into the basement of that school where I was teleported to, guess what? El Segundo in California. So the famous building there. And then from there to Mars, the same underground cavern that I had talked about in my prior experience. And they brought me there to chronovise the future, which I'm able to do without the use of technology. I have a mental ability that allows me to see future events without the aid of technology, which other people have to use.
You told me before when we talked about it, I asked you if you had ever used the chronovisor before, and you said no. Did
No.
they have a chronovisor there for you and you just said, I don't need that? Watch this?
No, because they obviously knew that I was able to do that. So
Okay.
they needed my help because they knew or know, at least at the time they knew that I was able to do that. So I did that. They brought me there to that same cavern and they asked me to chronovise the future. So I did for them. I saw vast cities in the future of Mars, which were very clean with human life. There were tall glass buildings, like tall kind of glass structures. Both of the guys, Obama and Bashago, were very excited about this and they thanked me. So after that, they teleported me back to California, then to Massachusetts.
So how did you travel? I know this, you wrote down as much as you could possibly, obtain. But I just want to, if you can answer this, how did you, if you were, so when you do your chronovision, are you putting yourself in that period and you have to be brought back, or can you chronovise? Or because it sounded like you said you were viewing Mars in the future, and then you and Andrew and Barack Obama went back afterwards. I didn't know how they chronovised there, if it's something that you're doing or if you were bringing them with.
They didn't chronovise, but they were there when he told everybody about the experience, and they were excited about what he had told everybody else, that they discovered and saw the future of Mars because of Michael's ability, which he had to be in the place to see what it was doing. But back then they were already planning what they're executing right now, which is the missions to Mars, which is the terraform, not necessarily terraforming, but getting people up there and creating a colony up there. Now, I got a question. When you were on Mars, did you look back? Well, yeah, Earth's a bit far away. It'll be a little dot, but still.
I mean, I could have, but I didn't. I was focusing specifically on what they had asked me to focus on because I was.
Yeah, exactly. You were 12. I mean, I remember my 7th grade as well. So yeah, those are definitely experiences. Now it might have been blocked out. I don't think that was necessarily blocked out by your subconscious. What about the possibility of them having blocked it out so that you wouldn't remember the things that they're obviously doing?
Yeah, well, I haven't finished yet, but when they brought me back to the middle school, there's a part that says Obama didn't want to erase my memory, but he had to. And he said that because one day I'd do great things and I had to think more of myself, whatever that means. I kind of get what that means now, I guess, but and then later that day, I had a meltdown in gym class, and one of the things that Andy had said was that we, meaning him and Barack, were from the CIA and that they needed this kid.
You went to gym class after having traveled to Mars and viewed the future. So, question: the gravity on Mars was significantly different, slightly different,
it is,
and
we're actually physically stronger on Mars than we are here.
Okay, so gravity's lighter. So that meant that when you got back here, your body had to adjust to the heavier gravity and the larger pull. And so in gym class, it just overtook you all of a sudden. Okay.
That could have been it. Yeah, I suppose. But I did sort of, I think I always remembered having that meltdown, kind of like, and I had them a lot, because I just had all throughout my childhood, my teen years, especially my early 20s, I had this like lingering depression that just crippled me sometimes, and I didn't really know why. I thought it was for like emotional reasons within myself or other things, but the more I realize now that it has to do with the fact that my memory was suppressed and I had been through these types of experiences, and it just eventually inevitably caught up with me on some level. But you know, I had
It'll
like,
affect you when you don't remember what you did,
right,
you know.
yeah, and I had like these meltdowns. I had, you know, nervous breakdowns, emotional meltdowns a lot, you know, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I love music so much, is because it gives me a way to kind of like put that out of me, you know. It's a healing process. Um, that's why I've continued to be a musician up until right now. I started playing music when I was a child, and writing my own music and everything. But I think it's you know, that's an important part of healing as well. But yeah, I mean, that's one experience that I have written down, and that my wife wrote down actually for me. And there's more. It's continued, but it goes on to 2 years
We're
later.
talking like Edgar Casey-esque type stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm I'm quite possibly related to people of that nature, people who can do things like that. Like one of my one of my family lines is Crowley, like Aleister Crowley. You familiar with him?
I
No,
mean,
I
the
have no
Beast
idea.
666.
That guy, yeah. And he was similar to Edgar Casey in that I believe in that he had the ability to do these things. And
I think Edgar Casey was doing a whole different thing than Aleister Crowley was. I mean, he was
yeah,
more into demonology and the Lesser Key of Solomon and
mhm,
summoning different types of spirits.
yeah. I mean, everybody has their own sort of interests, I guess. I mean, it's regardless of the level of ability you have with these things, but
I
you know,
uh, I was I was recently sorry about that. I was recently contacted by a religious group, and because I was interested in Aleister Crowley for a long time, I just like his story, and then the way that media portrayed him as like this evil character, and he doesn't really sound like that. He was kind of just a free-willed spirit, but and he was kind of rebellious against his church family, which is
yeah,
really common in youth. I mean, I always see people try to rebel against their parents, you know, regardless if they have the same beliefs or not. They just want to be different. And that's what I felt like Aleister Crowley, how he started out. Just, I mean, because they said in his youngest childhood years, he was actually um, into being a pastor when he grew up and stuff like that. And then eventually I think he had some kind of encounter with the house cleaner or the maid that
mm,
broke him at about 12 years old. And I don't want to elaborate too much into it, but basically it sounds like they had like an affair between the two of them. She eventually got fired for it, and it started his uh, public persona of like this sex cult leader that was into
mm,
the dark arts. I don't think that is necessarily his MO.
yeah. Well, you know, and you'll find out that with a lot of these people that are famous for these sort of abilities, that I mean, I'm not really, I guess I'm starting to be well known for having these kinds of abilities, but um,
You
you'll find
consider
out
like these indigo children? Do you like that classification?
there, yeah, there are those categorizations, but I think I'm a little young to be in that category, frankly. Um, that's just, if you look at what that is, it's a certain age group, but it's, for me, um, if you look at a lot of these people who have these kinds of abilities, we all have a certain genetic lineage. And um, I think you'll find that, for instance, people like Michael Ralph, who has an extensive writing list of writings about this, his experiences with Mars teleportation and stuff. Um, he said that people who were selected for these types of programs were basically done it was basically done. They were basically selected for their genetics and their ancestry. It has everything to do with that on some level. And I share ancestry with probably Edgar Casey. I probably share ancestry with Aleister Crowley. I share like a family name with him. I share.
Well,
There's other.
because of the bottlenecking of the human race, aren't most people related? They said the Bushes were actually related to Egyptian pharaohs, and there's actually like pretty solid evidence that we all got kind of bottlenecked in Europe at what we call now Europe at one point, and civilization kind of grew again after that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely we are all ultimately related. In my opinion, in my belief, anyway. Actually, it's not even an opinion, but some, are more closely related than others. And I mean, I'm half Irish, so is like for hundreds of years, most of my ancestry was Irish. Actually, for thousands of years, probably was Irish, and then it was like British, English, Scottish, some like Viking, Welsh. But it's all the same region and the same people, and you'll find it's the same thing with other people who have similar abilities. It's basically a genetic thing from groups from that region. So it's interesting, but it's actually like one of the first things they asked me when I first was
you also
asked.
mentioned that your wife was part of the Merovingian line as well, right?
She has some ancestry in that, yeah, but she is also very, Northwest European. She's Irish, Scottish, English, Welsh, Dutch. It's like she's virtually genetically identical to me. It's kind of interesting. But, some Viking, I probably. But these are all like people that come from that have these abilities, that are renowned for these abilities, tend to spring greatly from the people of those genetic groups and those what are currently nations.
So it's a genetic ability.
Yeah.
Or there's a benefit in genetics.
I'm sorry?
I said, or there's some kind of benefit coming from those genetics compared to, the public or others that they're using lineage for some reason. Like there's got to be some benefit.
Well, it's interesting because one of the first things they asked me when I was asked to come, if I wanted to come and help with the first Mars teleportation project that I was an experiencer, that I experienced, was that if I was Irish. They asked me actually specifically if I was Irish, and I'm like, well, yeah, I am, because I mean, my mom is actually right from Ireland. Like my grandparents were from Ireland. It's like I have an Irish passport as well, not just an American passport, but I use an Irish passport when traveling.
It's not the Celtic region, I guess, that has a lot of Druidism that's going on there.
Well, there were, specifically Ireland had a lot of Druids at one point. I mean, I'm probably descended from those people, but it's hard to
What's
really.
with Stonehenge?
I've never been to it, so I don't know.
Okay. Just wondering, being closer than we are, you might know more about it than but anyway.
Genetically, yeah, I am closer. I'm in California.
Well, yeah, true. But, my heritage, my dad took me to the Paleontology Museum in Mexico City, and we went to the different pyramids and everything else, learned about the calendar and all the different numbering, coding, and the languages that they were using, and different problems that they had in that time, because it was all historical records. I mean, it's like the Egyptians, literally. They kept everything in records. And so, yeah, I followed it up. So I assumed that family lines would teach about different things about, for example, your mom told you things about Ireland and different things that she had when she was growing up in Ireland that were different. Maybe, perhaps, I don't know.
Well, I spent some of my childhood living in Dublin, actually. So, but the modern country of Ireland is significantly different to what it used to be in the past. So it's sort of hard to, I mean, even if you were to spend 30 or 40 years living there, it would be still very difficult to kind of uncover everything about it. It's just, I mean, it's much like what has happened to North America in that we are, well, quite familiar with the United States, but we don't even really know what existed before it. It's basically similar to, a lot of people do, obviously, because of research and this kind of thing. But I'm talking about, like, European Americans don't really generally know what existed in what is now the United States and Canada before the founding of the 13 colonies.
Because they don't care.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I just think it's more
Not in their wheelhouse. They got to do what they got to do. They got their nose to the grindstone. They're doing their thing. They got no time to actually give a rat's butt about anything else. To be
Well, I
honest,
feel like they might have a personal interest in it, but they have no interest in telling the public what the actual history is.
well, and
True.
here's how things could likely change in the future. We're living in such a weird time where things can really transform very quickly, and before you know it, most people could have that kind of time, and it would leave them to uncover these things without being kind of told them. They would just naturally find this information, I think, because maybe just out of sheer boredom.
because you got nothing else to do. There are no jobs, and you got money to do what you want. Because but all that would be dependent on a little identification chip that can be scanned at any portal or entryway or anything else to make sure that you are you and you get the benefits that you have all the rights as a citizen to receive. Correct. So it's just a little tiny chip that it's already been shown on 60 Minutes that was in a goo that was, a little less than a millimeter large. It's not even the size of a grain of rice. It's a tip of a grain of rice that's in there. It won't
There's
even
that.
hurt. It won't be bothersome. And Sweden's been doing it for a couple of years. Hey, what's the problem with the mark?
But that wouldn't happen if and when we adopt Bitcoin. There's no requirement for any such mark or anything like that with such a thing as Bitcoin. And I think that's going to really transform people's lives economically, and thus it's going to change the amount of time they have to invest in anything or everything. It's going to change the world. I see it coming in the next few months, even. I think
What kind of reset are we looking at?
I think Bitcoin's now the equivalent of $35,000. I think probably easily by December it's going to be over $200,000 for one. A year from that, it's going to easily be $500,000, very easily.
A little bit after that, you won't even be able to measure it in dollars, because the dollar will be worthless if we keep doing what we're doing to implode the dollar. So then we got to make it. What's going to be the reference point?
Satoshis, which are fractions of a dollar, or excuse me, fractions of a Bitcoin. They are I think 100 millionths of a Bitcoin is a Satoshi, something to that effect.
Smallest quanta of Bitcoin.
So
All right.
it's microscopic. There's only 21 million of them, and it's like, it just seems like we're moving towards that, and around the world too, because every currency is tied into the United States dollar. We realize that as Americans, and hopefully at this point.
Not
you
everyone. Russia got out of the dollar completely 2 weeks ago. China's been divesting from the dollar since 2006 when they started this whole thing. In fact, they were in control of the 2008 financial crisis because they talked to France. That's a whole nother fucking story. They've been divesting from the dollar for a very long time, and it's been quietly, so nobody would know that they're running away from this huge debt that is absolutely unpayable if it weren't for centralized capital.
Well, and the other thing is, like, they don't want to be controlled by the whims of the people who print money in America, which those people don't really represent the majority of Americans anyway.
Than anybody except their own interests.
There you go. So, like, they are also quickly adopting things like Bitcoin. I mean, the Russians they're up to their eyeballs in sanctions from the United States. Do you really think that they're going to care if the dollar goes away? I don't think so. I think they're going to be one of the quickest countries to adopt this new type of currency.
But this was the last straw. They've also been getting away from it, but this is like the preparations before a conflict. Because we've got all three of the players from Ezekiel 38 and 37 and 38 that have come together, and they're all rattling their sabers. I mean, we see what's going on in Taiwan Straits. We see that last week they were also giving warning shots to the British military when they were going through international waters near Crimea. It's all coming to a head. Except this ain't gonna be like WW2 because it already started. I mean, this is WWCV.
That could be the case. However, if you're talking about Bible prophecy, right? So I'm familiar with the Bible myself. Do you think that
you're a minister in what? You said you've been a minister for 10 years. A minister in what?
21 years.
21 years.
Yeah, and I started studying long before that, like 6 or 7 years before that.
But you're a minister, but there's lots of different churches and different things that you can be a minister of, which is what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to not talk about that because I think if I do, it will likely taint your perception of what I would say about it because of prejudice. So I think I would I would like to, keep that
Lead the fifth
to as a private matter.
No worries. That is your right.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, do you just to pose a question? Do you think that's a literal, actual physical conflict, or perhaps just an ideological or even spiritual one?
It's on all three bases because they all reflect each other. It is a spiritual battle that leads to a physical, tangible altercation that will happen. All the other things that were written about have happened as well. It's not on our timeline or in our interpretation, but they end up happening. Okay, so
right, but since it hasn't actually happened yet, who are we to sort of be dogmatic about saying how it's going to take place? Because
no, it's not right there. It tells many people have thought, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be, but the things don't fit. The pieces don't fit. Why? Because all the pieces are exactly there. But at this particular point, who would have thought that Libya would be the slave running freaking jihad hellhole that it has become after Hillary did her thing over there. But they're part of Sudan that are also getting together with Turkey, who was, I mean, in the 80s, Turkey was is continuing to be a part of NATO, but he used to be side in secular Europe.
What name did you
That's
just say?
also
Mike?
changed.
Mike,
Sorry, Jake.
what name did you just say?
Country-wise or person-wise?
Person-wise. We probably shouldn't
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah.
probably
Okay.
shouldn't
Sorry.
recognize the lovely Hillary Clinton in any way in a
I don't
negative
know anything about Hillary Clinton.
she's such a beautiful woman and great politician.
Andrew Basiaggio loves her. Thinks she's wonderful.
Yeah.
I personally don't know anything about her, and that's why I didn't vote for her.
I mean, I had my own reasons for not voting for her, but it wasn't because she's a woman, which is what people want you to think. I don't think that's why I did it. And me personally, the time I had a problem with, that was a public appearance that you can talk on because it was a public appearance, and I think it was kind of a staged event. She went on a public radio show, which is kind of catered to the Black audience. It's called The Breakfast Club. They're a very big channel, and they've had a radio show for years and years. And she went on there, and all of a sudden she pulls this hot sauce out of her pocket. Like, it wasn't the most virtue signal thing. And she's like, oh yeah, I use this all the time. And I'm just like, okay, who does that? You don't just pull out hot sauce to try to cater to the audience you're at. I mean, oh gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of things about her that I could point out just publicly that are enough to
You guys like my Facebook cup?
Yeah, I saw that. The Facebook mug.
Not pandering whatsoever.
Take advertisement out right here.
Just to make sure that they don't deplatform us because we're pushing their shit. Is that really the Orwellian system that we want to be part of? And that's what I'm talking about. Society itself will tend towards that. Why? Because it is a quantifiable outcome of the banality of existence as it is. So if the entire world goes in that direction, are you going to run along with a pack of lemmings? If you know they're jumping off a cliff? No. You stick your fucking butt at home and you make sure you do what you got to do, period. And you can't be part of that bigger fucking system because it will just chew you up and spit you out. And that's what the actual individuality comes down to is, how do you help others the most? Because that's going to help you. That's the way a normal society should work, not this behemoth of a machine that just, it processes people. Is that life? It might be in the future, but shit, we don't all have to live in that freaking reality. That's dystopian to me in some levels, because your privacy, your individuality, your essence with reality, your contact with others, and your interaction, when everything's monitored, analyzed, and everything else. I mean, it goes way beyond, and I know that we can't get away from that because that's the way society is tending. Everything's pushing us towards more surveillance and more biometry and more zero identity so that they can find the people that are doing wrong. The problem is they never find the people that are doing shit wrong. They're just bugging the shit out of a bunch of people who ain't doing nothing, but they're using it as, oh yeah, I got you for jaywalking the other day. That camera caught you. Yeah, what about 32 kids that got kidnapped over the last month? Did you happen to see who fucking took them? No. I mean, that's the whole fucking point of this whole damn thing, is to take away everybody's liberties to give you something that they never freaking give you, because they're just a bunch of lying sacks of garbage. And the best way to deal with lying sacks of garbage is just not freaking deal with them. You go your own way. Now, are they going to force their will on everybody, just like the Gestapo did back in the 40s? Yeah, that's what they want, because they're the ones who freaking planned the first one in the first place. And they're trying to do it again. The playbook is being simply drawn back up and replayed out.
Yeah, but
It's not creative.
There's a tendency for people to give authoritarianism too much credence, and there's this
It also
fear.
depends on the quantity of Karens that are out there to enforce it.
Yeah, the thing is just to ignore it.
There's Karens being out there enforcing it, and then you also have a society that doesn't want to remember its history. So are you doomed to repeat yourself because you want to erase everything that makes you feel bad from the past? And that's what we have today. We have
Can't learn from that.
You should have it around so you have something to reference and say, this is where we weren't doing it right.
Exactly.
And we've changed from then. And now that's
let's
the
make
only
sure we
way.
don't do it again, because this is how it happened the first time. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And yet we still got people chained up in Libya being sold for $500. I mean, holy fucking shit. Didn't we fight a war 200 years ago doing this?
What do you think this is? Rumble? Slow down with all that child trafficking.
No, I didn't. No. I didn't mention children. I'm talking about human beings, people that leave Central Africa that want to go to Europe, and they get caught and seized in the middle of that freaking civil war hellhole that is the entire region right now, and they don't give a shit about human beings. If you're a migrant and you're going from Africa to Europe, you might become a slave. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, your weight, or whatever the hell is. However, some genders will be used more than others in certain particular ways. But that slavery, which was supposedly abolished in 1865, well, it's alive and kicking again. Okay, we can't eliminate it. Why not? We made it happen again by creating a chaotic situation to where there is no justice or rule or recognition of the importance of human life, period.
The thing is, we haven't figured out why, because we
created the situation for it to happen.
So the question is why, and the answer is money. You're talking about $500. I mean, I don't want to, that's a horrible thing, obviously, but look at what inflation has done. It didn't used to be $500. It was a lot less,
Well, think about it like this. We're American. In most other countries, we can be held for more ransom than $500. I can't imagine we'd be put into slavery right away, especially if they knew you were American. I could see them making a ransom claim out of it. I've seen a movie before. Americans are worth more than most when it comes to people trading.
It just depends on the corporation they work for. That happened a lot in Colombia, and the amount of money.
It's about the amount of money and attention you can get. Positive attention, not attention that draws them to your location kind of attention, but people want to be recognized for those kind of things as an egotistic thing. People that
want the notoriety.
Crimes. It's money and ego and power.
So the question there is, what's the solution? I think I was just talking about it. It's Bitcoin. I know it sounds ridiculous and laughable, and that's fine.
It's what's working for so many people. It's just,
it is working. It is absolutely working.
I wish I had the guts to take that kind of commitment. I mean, and I know by the time I recognize it, it's going to be too late. I already know that with most things.
Well, everybody's going to use it. And what happens is stability of the digital currency that won't devalue or have inflationary pressures, because it is what it is. It's been created, the amount that's been created. And so what you make in that quantity, and this is the economic question. It's, does your labor represent the buying power, the products that you could purchase before. I mean, buying power has dropped. I mean, I remember when my parents would be able to buy stuff that nowadays, first of all, if it falls apart, it's, extremely expensive. It's not, and salaries haven't gone up that much in 30 years. Okay. For a house that was 110,000, then 200, another house that was 220,000, to now they're 350,000, but you're making the same salary. Okay. But in dollar terms, that's a devaluation that they had in dollar terms. In other countries, it's even worse. I mean, Latin America is, Asia is also, Africa is also, they've all got their own problems and issues, monetary issues. Now, if you can have a stable currency, be it Bitcoin or some other thing, to where their work won't devalue over time and the products they purchase increase in price over time, if everything remains steady, you can actually build things, and you can build real concrete improvements to life, because things won't be so inherently expensive because you're feeding, that centralized banking system. Sorry, I'm done. I'm out.
No, when I think about electronic currency and cryptocurrency becoming like the main staple, I already know that it's just the hippie in me that tells me that there's going to be a large group of society that's going to go, well, fuck it, we're going to start a commune, and it's going to be a trade type thing. We're going to be trading services, and that's how we're going to get along. We're not going to be stuck to this power that is the government, because that's how they'll think of Bitcoin if it becomes that big. They'll think of it like its own entity, and they'll want to rebel against it. It's just human nature. I can't imagine everybody just gonna be like, all right, we're all gonna do Bitcoin. Bitcoin is where we're gonna be now. And it's just like we were talking about before with sheep.
What if you didn't have a choice, Jake? What if everybody was forced to adopt it because it was the most stable thing, because everything else had lost any kind of footing?
I feel like there's only so many things you actually need in life. I mean, there's only so many things that you actually need in life. You can grow your own food, build your own shelter, and actually own your own land. That's about all you need. And if you get a group of people together that actually want to do that on a reasonable basis, it would work.
Yeah, and historically over the last 100 years, that is the probable textbook definition of poverty, because you have none of the benefits of anything else. Yeah, just look at the Amish. They can do it. They can do it, but it's really hard living.
But think about what our textbook definition of poor and middle class is. The average person in the U.S. when I was growing up, when I was in high school, so 90s and early 2000s. So when I was in high school, was you had 3 TVs in your house. Do you really think you're middle class or struggling at any point with 3 TVs in your house? Like, it's like we were talking about before. Having AC in your house has nothing to do with the fact that you're using it to survive. You're using it to be comfortable. You have gotten past living to survive. Now you're looking for the best comfort in your life. And that's where Americans have gotten. It's not like a third world country. That's why we don't classify ourselves as that. So we aren't struggling to survive. A person struggling to survive.
We will be, because the U.S. is quickly becoming a third world country because of the policies, the institutions, and the corruption and everything else is exactly what brought down many countries throughout Latin America. Why? Because it's a planned, orchestrated event.
The thing we assume there is that everything hinges on the dollar, which it doesn't.
As for the last 100 years, that's why.
Yeah, it doesn't anymore, but we just haven't realized this as a society. Bitcoin doesn't, you can't change Bitcoin. It changes you. The fact that it exists has already changed everything already, but people just haven't gotten their heads that far yet.
They haven't processed it yet because it's still extremely foreign to them. You're right.
But nonetheless, the government knows, and the government actually does care enough, at least people in the government care enough to sort of be able to foresee this and take
Now,
crack-
because it's too big to back down, they've been trying to knock this out since its inception. I
Well,
mean, the Chinese banned it and everybody else, and now they're all open up to it because now it's so big and powerful that they can't deny it, and they know they can't shut it down because they've tried. And
Yeah.
that makes it above the power of those centrals. And that's why each one of them wants to create their own cryptocurrency. And that is one thing that I don't know where we're going to go with that.
Well,
I
I
know.
mean, there's that what we just had recently with that GameStop debacle and what people did on Robinhood shows you the power that you can take away from these big.
The power is always with the people. We have to give it to them. And that's the problem. We give it to them freely, and we
But that's
shouldn't.
only because,
anymore.
but like Michael's saying with Bitcoin, that's only because there wasn't other paths. If your only choice of currency is the US dollar and you don't have another path, I could see how this is going to open up new opportunities. But at the same time, I could see why we were so bottlenecked before and having to deal with what we had. I
Yeah,
mean,
because you were bottlenecked for a reason. The central banks put you where they wanted to put you. They created the crises that needed to keep you the fuck down.
And the biggest thing that they've done is deprive people of sufficient finances to feed themselves and their families, to make them fight their wars, especially. I mean, America's basically been the garrison for foreign wars that haven't benefited America. They've benefited in international banking cartels for I don't know how long, probably since World War One, even.
Going back hundreds of years, because
definitely since 1913, since the Federal Reserve Act, definitely since then.
the U.S. But I'm talking about the centralized banking system has controlled royalty
Sure.
throughout Europe, and then also transferred. Now it's controlling China because they built China up. Okay, It was Kissinger that opened it up so that they could take advantage of that swath, because capitalism spreads the wealth more perfectly than any other system. The problem is that we absorbed 1 billion poor people in China who are now doing very well, while we're starting to count beans. Okay,
Yeah, but
that was a plan for the last 60 years.
Yeah, but so we're fed this idea that we need to pursue an aggressive solution to that problem, but the truth is absolutely that we don't need to do that. What we need to do, instead of playing that game, is circumvent it by using another method.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm such a strong advocate for Bitcoin, is that it is the solution. It is the thing that we can circumvent all of those.
If I had money to play, I'd definitely be playing with that. I mean, I love to play in the stock market, and I don't gamble. I study well,
there's no gambling. This is the thing. And
exactly. There's
those same people who create the money, the dollar, also create fear, uncertainty, and doubt about things like Bitcoin and alternative solutions to the problems that they create, and they want to use you to solve for their
because
agenda.
The American people are the world's piggy bank. Okay, they work their ass off. They are productive as shit. And in many cases, they give up their personal lives in order to work from high school to grave. I mean, they bust their ass.
But we don't need to do that anymore. It's just that's an old way of doing things, and
that productivity. That's what making China great now, is because of the amount of productivity. When you produce for the planet, you do well. When Brazil and Argentina were producing the food for the planet back in the early 20th century, they were also, the fourth and fifth largest economies in the world. When you produce for others, it's good.
I think.
Sorry, Jake, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was agreeing with you. I think that labor work that you're referring to is the steak and potatoes of society when it comes to, that's what people will go to, and then they know it works. I started my own
ethic.
I started my own landscaping company, and that's what I do. I landscape for myself, and I make a lot more than I would working for any other company. Are there other roads like we're talking about, like adding Bitcoin? Of course, there's other roads and opportunities, but people will also by nature go with what's safe and a safe route. If there's any doubt in their mind, I could see them going another route over that just because of the fear of
Yes,
it.
and the people that control the economies know that, which is why whenever they need to shore up their debt, they create some kind of panic or something else. Why? Because everybody knows that the American will react in panic and will invest in the most steady thing that he knows, treasury bonds. You can invest in those T-bills, buddy. And so you go, that is your um, fear move. That's what people do, and they bank on that. And so when people don't go to the treasury anymore, all of a sudden they're going, holy shit, nobody's buying our debt. That's never happened before.
It's
That's
becoming
when the end
it's
bites
like-
everybody in the ass.
Do you guys want to hear a fact about a mathematical fact about the price of Bitcoin and how much money you could have made with it so far? Just
Sure.
I don't know if I want to cry.
I would love our show to have a few facts in it and not just all of our opinions.
okay. Let's see.
Do we have a reference point? Where are you referencing this information from?
Well, okay, I want to just, you can research this yourself, but it's a fact that the price of a Bitcoin in early to mid 2018, right, was like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It fluctuated, right? So if you had bought, you know, a single Bitcoin, let's just say, for example, say you have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to blow, to invest in 2018, and you bought one then. Now, that same Bitcoin would be $35,000, right? So if, say, in 2018 you had
That's
bought
sevenfold. That's a sevenfold gain in 3 years.
yeah, that's a really short time.
Yeah.
Right? So if you had bought, say, 10 or 100 Bitcoins in 2018, if you had the money for that, you would have a lot of money right now, right?
Yeah, and that's what a lot of them did. And so, you know, the guys who have more. And it's that controlling of. Now the question is, how is it that the normal working class person is going to get better when they can't keep up with everybody? See, I know the competitive game, I was part of it, but it also burns you out really fucking early. But that's not the reality for most people. Most people are sitting there and just busting their ass to survive. And there's got to be a better way, more legitimate way to be able to do what they're doing, but live a little bit more comfortably. And comfortably means that you know that there's going to be food on the table. You know that you're not going to be kicked out of your house because, you know, you didn't pay the rent for the last 3 months. You know, some kind of stability in the environment where you're at. And, you know, okay, if that's, you know, 25 square feet of living space, I don't know if that's also quality, but that also depends on the perspectives. But people need to have a roof over their head and food, and then something to do. Otherwise, you can't say, oh, those people just deserve to die. They'll go, oh yeah, you know what? Well, I'm going to grab a bat since you're going to kill me anyway. I'm going to take some out beforehand. That's what that kind of despair and desperation creates, and that's what needs to be reduced and eliminated. Now, are they the only violent ones? Fuck no. People are violent as shit, and millionaires are violent. They get away with it because they know how to hide this shit a little bit better. But it's not out of despair usually. Okay, when people are hungry, they'll do anything they need to feed their kids. You know, when they're living under a bridge because the house they've been in for the last 15 years, you know, they lost it because somebody did something somewhere that, hell, nowadays somebody can break their leg in front of your house and sue you and you're out on the street. You know, that is a situation that most people need to feel stable. The problem is that whenever they get to that point, they're really not productive. They don't do much at all. And we can see that in societies that tried to implement those realities. There's no motivation to get out there and do something.
Well, why do we need a society that turns people into robots. I mean, why does anybody think that that has to be the basis of their existence? It really doesn't. That's just what people have been fed and indoctrinated with in order
That's the
to.
way you pay the bills.
Yeah,
That's
and
how you put food on the table. That's how you pay for the car and the roof.
it definitely pays the bills, but that's when it comes down to it, that's all you know. If you don't know how to break the mold, you're gonna go with the flow of things and make what money you know is available out there. If you knew there was another alternative, then maybe you would, but you'd have to you'd feel like you were jumping out of your comfort zone just because of what you were taught in the past if you don't have any kind of a safety net. Like life tells you you
My
kind of
mom
need.
couldn't handle the lack of a
Otherwise,
safety net.
well, yeah. Otherwise, you're stuck working this, day-to-day job where you can't even call in sick. I mean, that's what it was prior to this pandemic. I remember because I've worked construction jobs my whole life, and it's always been more of unless you're throwing up in front of the boss, you're not going home. And they did not treat it like, oh, you think you have a sore throat or you think you have a cough, you should probably take 2 weeks off and get tested and all of these other things. We never dealt with that. It was always you had to prove you were sick before you were sick. And I've always grown up in that environment and always having to work every day, not being able to take a day off. And that's why I've said, even being able to, once I realized the skills that I have, I could actually open my own business. And I'm glad I'm able to do that in this country, open my own business and start from scratch and, charge for what I'm worth and be able to do the same jobs I was doing working for somebody else, but making a way different amount of money and taking on a lot more responsibility and probably a lot more work in the long run. But I think my efforts are geared towards the right ambition, and I can see
Your
people not.
motivation is there because if you work harder, your life gets better. Period.
Yeah,
I used to be a union carpenter, and so I know what that's like. But I worked, I did an apprenticeship in the city of Boston and worked on all of the buildings there and graduated to being a journeyman, started my own company, moved down to the New York area, worked down there, helped build banks and everything else and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't, you can really get caught in that sort of thing where you just don't have time for anything else. But I think it is important to sort of make time for other things and other learning. And because when you do that, you can realize that, you don't really have to do all of that or any of that in the first place. You just have to really know the way things move and where they're moving. And get on that train or get on that truck before it runs you over, basically, because that's how it is. I mean, I haven't had a real job in years, like an actual real, to me, doing work, that's like a real job. Yep.
Let me ask you, what gave you the comfort to jump to Bitcoin? Did you have a safety net and you could go, hey, I can put a small amount into this and then see how it does? Or did you just jump in head first because you trusted it?
It wasn't emotion at all. You don't base these things on emotion whatsoever.
Well, I think there's too much emotion tied to our currency because I think it controls a lot of our lives. Like if you're able to feed your kids at night, and if you're spending your money unwisely, whether it's you're taking your money and you have a drug problem and you're spending them the wrong way in that tense, or you're spending them at the strip club, whatever it is, if your family's not getting the money that you're making and you're not able to provide for them because you're making poor financial decisions, I could see the emotional connection to money. And just like if you were to gamble away a large amount of money, you would feel bad internally. Like I could have done a way better thing with that currency than I could have the way I did. And so I do think there's still emotion tied to it, but it would be nice if humans could be comfortable in the sense that they didn't have to worry about that currency. That would be great. where you weren't tied to it. You knew it was
Mhm.
going to come and go, and it wasn't something you were worried about.
Yeah, it's the thing to do is really separate the emotion out, take the emotion out of it completely and look at it mathematically, like you're solving a math problem. You have a problem, your problem is, and it's everybody has this problem. We're not doing the things that we really want to be doing with our lives, and we're doing things that, you know, we don't really necessarily like, but we're doing it because we need the money to eat, to pay the bills, to pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever, to feed ourselves, to feed the family. And this is the way that society's been sort of indoctrinated to think. And the truth is that we don't have to be that way. We just have to separate ourselves out of it and look at it as a math problem almost. And when we do that, we realize, you can realize that, you know, you can take $300 right now and just, rather than keep it in a bank account, put it in something else. And
Well,
over
and
time,
just starting my own business, you do have to come to this own comfort from going from working from somebody else. I think there's a lot of steps, even going into putting your money in electronic currency or Bitcoin. I've noticed that even going into a small business, it was like, okay, you're gonna have to spend money to make money. You can't be asking customers to pay you in advance and then you do the job for them. It just doesn't look professional. There's a way you have to kind of come in with a safety net, and at least for me, and I don't know if it was like that for you, or if you just invested what you had and it grew from there, or how you got to the point where you're at now, without without giving away too much personal information. I know you don't want to.
it's
But
okay. Well, it has to do with understanding of the way of where things are going and separating yourself from the emotion of it, because we are living in a time where things are drastically changing, and if we don't keep up with them, they can run us over. It really is like that. Um, the whole world is becoming more electronic. Everything is becoming more electronic. We're talking, you know, I'm in California, he's in Brazil, you're in Illinois. You know what I mean? We're talking, we're hundreds and thousands of miles away from each other, some of us. So it's like, it's all becoming like that. And the more we realize that that's just a reality and we can't change it, we're not going to be able to change it. The thing is, well, how do we benefit ourselves from that? Well, we're doing that right now by talking, you know. We're learning from each
We are
other.
the news now.
Yeah, we're learning from each other, and hopefully we're all growing that way. But information is the key thing. You have to keep up with that, with what information is accurate, and therefore it has nothing to do with emotion. It has to do with what's accurate, and what's accurate is based on pure and simple mathematics. Like 1 + 1
Quantum
is,
calculations.
yeah. So
hey, Michael, before we get too far out tonight, I want to touch back on your book and some of the things you guys. Well, not your book, like you had written a book, but your notes. Yeah, exactly. Your notes that you had referenced earlier, and you had said we have covered some of the stories in there, in a good majority of them. But you said you had a couple in there that you wanted to bring up. You brought up one of them. What was that other one that you were talking about? I thought you said, or you could give us more detail on some of the stories that we've gone over before, because you said there was it was a little esoteric, and you thought some people might be able to not be able to follow along, but there was still
yeah,
more
well,
detail.
there's stuff that's only kind of relevant to me, really, because when you're dealing with these kinds of experiences, they can be relevant only to the individual experiencing them. It's kind of, there's some stuff like that, but and then there is stuff that kind of jumps really all over the place that would be really time consuming to explain. Like it would be it would be for like a whole
Well,
lengthy
why don't you just introduce us to it, and then maybe it'll give us a reason to, jump on again sometime.
And next week.
Hmm. Okay, let's see. Memories of being on Mars again, and meeting people who we already know, who we're familiar with, specifically Obama. I had heard about the death of this guy named Michael Ralph, his wife, and what happened there was he kind of freaked out and became crazy. Well, maybe not crazy, but a little bit aggressive and violent, I think, as a result of his wife having died on Mars in an accident, and that I had been brought there to kind of take over his job, basically, as a 5-year-old child. But he was an adult grown male. But this guy actually has like lengthy writings. He's a very especially with the help of his wife, who was a mental health professional from Australia, his current wife, his new wife. He's been able to really go into all this stuff and catalog it, and it's available to check out. I would recommend it, you guys, actually, because you can tend to kind of get focused on what, because they want it that way, one person is saying, and kind of assume, as they want you to, that this person is the arbiter of truth, which none of us are. We're all just parts of the big picture, So I would look up Michael Ralph. He has websites about his stuff. But yeah, it seems like the program, the secret space program, has had this type of individual on hire, basically, or on operation to do a specific task, which is using psychic and I hate to use the word psychic because it's so kind of hokey, but mental abilities, I guess we'll call them, to protect other people, actually. And they were using me as a 5-year-old child with these abilities to actually protect people in some way. And the interesting thing about Michael Ralph is that you'll find in his writings that he was saying there was and probably is an actual advanced civilization of humans on Mars, in the millions of people who have been living there and have actually colonized and live on the planet of Mars. I did not see those people. I was not privy to that, but Michael, who I apparently took his job, has stated that as being a fact. I think it's really interesting. I think there may be, as I've said, I'm only a small piece of this. I'm not claiming to be the arbiter of truth. I'm not claiming to be the only person who has any authority on this matter. That's obviously ridiculous, as some people have done, but there's obviously a much bigger picture that I'm not aware of, is what I'm saying. And I think that really people should take that take that into consideration and really look into it, because there's more than just one person, obviously.
Michael, sorry about that. You talked about some of the creatures that you saw on Mars. Can you describe them?
Yeah, I can. The first time I teleported there and we were done with our mission, we were kind of just exploring a little bit. It wasn't for very long, because these creatures came along and they were obviously very dangerous. They were bigger, definitely a little bit bigger than like adult human sized. And they were, I'm trying to think of something I could describe them, could compare them to on Earth, which is honestly pretty difficult, but in the past, I've described them as sort of like a cross between a scorpion and a T-Rex. And I've also described them as sort of comparable to like a pill bug. You know, you guys have pill bugs. We call them pill bugs on the East Coast, but
Call them roly polies.
roly-polies, yeah. If you take a pill bug and you like roll it out, you know, and then put it upright, it would be kind of like that. And like things coming out of them that I maybe are like claws or something. And
There's centipedes that are standing up, so obviously it's all their legs, and they can do whatever they want with them.
I guess it's kind of like that. They stand up, but maybe it's maybe they're able to lie down and move flat too. I don't move along. I don't know, but they were very
Likely, gravity's lighter, which means that they don't have as many hangups as what they would have here.
They were very quick, but as I said, when I saw them when I was 5, other people came up, and one of those people had a weapon and killed them. So I was
They know how to deal with them at least.
Why,
Yeah.
how can you say there was this person that came up with a weapon? I mean, you can't even touch on that story without describing it a little better.
That person was
You walked up. Yeah.
that person was me. I didn't know who that person was until I became 44 years old. I guess maybe I should have at some point, although I had both of those memories around the same time as well. So it's kind of like, it's
Time travel messes with your mind.
it obviously, yeah, clearly. But the thing is, I'm writing it down, or it's being written down, and I can do my best to recount it, recall it, tell it. And the reason I'm doing that is because there are other people out there who may still think they're crazy and might want to consider the fact that they're not. And even if they don't tell anybody, that's fine. But, those people can realize that they're not crazy and this stuff is real. And I don't really care what people think about me, frankly, whatsoever. I'm not like, I'm fortunate. I'm in a position now where I don't have to care what other people think about me. I didn't used to be, but.
Hey, Michael, I before you finish that, before we get off this show, I wanted to make sure you had a chance, because I think there was some one-sided allegations staged against you and I wanted to give you the opportunity to address them, because
What, this happened on Aaron's show?
I'm not going to name any names, but I know there was something going on where it was either because it was so busy and you couldn't connect, or I mean, honestly, because I asked Aaron if it was just busy or if it was something else, and I don't think Aaron would lie to me. So, and like I said, I thought Aaron was a good guy. Mr. Pena knows Aaron as well, and I don't think him to be a bad character by any means. I think he's a really good guy, and I don't know if Andrew might have had a certain set of instructions that he gave him or anything like that, or maybe it's just I mean, I also don't know your history as well with Andrew Basciago as you do. I would only be an outsider looking in. So at the same time, if Andrew has feelings towards you that I don't know about, I wouldn't be able to address those. But I do think you should get a chance to at least say some of the things, because even if it was just like the little thing at the end about you knowing Sasha. I like to jump in and at least let people know that, oh, okay, he does know this person. I mean, Andrew said, go talk to this person. I think this person could help you. And your response to me was, I know this person. I also know his wife. And like you had more to add to that. It wasn't like you had to go meet this person for the first time. So I wanted you to give you a chance. I mean, you were watching the show, and I wanted to give you a chance to rebuttal some of the things, especially if, and because you had also told me he got some name wrong, that you used to, you might have had an alias or something that you went by previously.
Yeah, well, I've used a lot of aliases in my life to sort of maintain a private existence, but one alias I used was Zolymon. I used the last name of Zolymon, Zolymon, and he didn't even get that.
Is there any significance to that?
No, it's just I mean, well, I guess it's sort of a corruption of the spelling of King Solomon from the Bible, actually. But it's my own personal variation on it. But because I identify with him a little bit, you know. But yeah, I mean, he
Ring of
didn't.
power.
Sorry.
You got the ring of power.
I just consider myself to be a very fortunate person, but also unfortunate in some ways. So it's kind of a mixed blessing, but it's okay.
Life's
But
funny that way.
yeah, but Andy didn't even get that right, you know.
And that's why I was asking you this, is because I don't know personally how many things Andy got right about you, and I wanted to give you this chance to at least address those if you did fallacies.
And I was actually just talking to Sasha Lesson's wife, and she herself, who was, you know, as educated, if not more, about a lot of stuff than Sasha. She herself has said that, you know, I'm not the crazy one, that Andy is the one living in the matrix, so to speak. That you know, I get it, but that he has a lot to learn still. And so rather than, you know, I just think I'm being slightly gaslighted here, and I see it for what it is, so I don't really care. But I think maybe other people might have difficulty with.
I think Michael, you have a very good following of people that are interested in your story. And when I went to the page and I saw 20,000 plus people that are looking, or 200,000 plus people on some videos that are looking at your story and wanting to know more about it. And if that's the case, I want your story to get its due justice, even if they don't want to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Well, because I do know, because I can tell you personally, I do know there's some people that watch this channel that also watch Aaron's channel, and they would like to hear both sides of it, even if the other person doesn't want to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. Well, I'm not taking away anything from what Andy has said either. I believe that he is telling some of the truth.
I think he's telling his truth, and I don't necessarily think it's the wrong truth. I just think he's always been telling his story the best of his knowledge, but I do think he's defensive sometimes and doesn't want to hear other people's accounts. Maybe it's because, I mean, as an attorney and somebody that passed the bar exam in Washington, he's convinced himself that he's able to determine whether a story is true or not, and decipher it off of that. But whatever it may be, I'm more interested in hearing people's stories. And if somebody's going to incriminate themselves, I'd rather have them do it in front of me rather than me have to call them out to do it.
Yeah. Well, I became a lawyer too, and you know, I'm nowhere near as prestigious as a Washington bar pass.
Well, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I think the one thing that stuck out to me the most is he kind of just interchanged you with Max Spears when he was talking most of the time, and he almost couldn't distinguish the difference between you and Max Spears. And he did say the wrong name several times. I bet if he listened back to it, he would also say that he said the wrong names several times, because I think he was using Max Spears when he was saying you, and he was using you when he said Max Spears, because one of you, apparently, according to Andy, had gone on Apex or something, said that their story wasn't true. I don't know if it was you or Max Spears, or Max Spears isn't here to answer because he died from the black goo. But I don't have much to say about Max's story, because I don't have enough of it. I just have a few times where he sat down and got to talk on points that he wanted to talk about, but was never questioned. And I think it shows a real courage to your own story when you can actually at least sit down and talk to others, and have a back and forth about it without blowing up on people. And I think, Andy's talked to a lot of people, I'll give him that much, but I think it is very deterring when you push people away like he does. And I don't think he does it purposefully. I don't know if it's because he's exhausted with talking to people, and he's had so many people try to mess with him and mess with his story. Because I know when he was running for president, he had somebody accuse him of killing like hundreds of children or something like that. He's claimed before, and I'm just like, well, yeah, that's a horrible thing. Nobody wants anybody to take those kind of claims or anything like that. And I don't by any means think Andy had anything to do with anything like that. I think he tied it into one of the Bushes as well. And I just don't see why everybody wants to discredit each other rather than at least hear out their experiences. They just want to look for whatever hole they can find or whatever it happens to be. The whole time he was talking about you, he was hinting at, I believe, Randy Kramer, if I had to guess, because he just kept dropping like hints in the background, and you could tell what he was doing. It wasn't not obvious. It was, the public trying to talk about COVID on YouTube. He was just using subtle references in order to get his message across.
Well, some people don't realize, and because they still live in the matrix, so to speak, that we don't have to conduct ourselves like this. All we have to do is just step outside of it momentarily and realize it for what it is. And the real solution is outside of it anyway. So it's kind of like, if you get locked into that matrix system, you do things for so many reasons that don't really they don't need to be done. It's like, and I just think on some level, for whatever reason, Mr. Bishaga was still in that system, and he doesn't need to be there. He needs to realize that he's just a small part of it, part of the big picture, and so we all are.
Well, and that's the one thing I noticed so I made a $5 donation just because for some reason, I know how Andy's show set up. He tries to go into his last word at the end of the show, and he tries to wrap it up with that. But they basically said they said, hey, I know you did an interview with Michael Macintosh. Then Andy talked for a great period of time, which it's his show, I understand. And then it seemed like they were asking me about something, but they were just using it as a talking point. And they didn't let me say anything, but I was happy to donate $5 because I would rather have it go to a cause where it was a positive message. And it's something that me and you had talked about before. You did want to thank Andy for at least helping you with finding some of the memories that you have today. Like,
yeah,
regardless of whether he wants to believe your story or not, I wanted to let him know that you weren't reaching out with ill intentions. It was a matter of, thank you. And I wanted to say this. And when he closed it, when he was talking to you, and said, and by the way, Michael, I want the best for you, and I really do wish the best for him. After he had talked about, because Aaron had already started talking, and Andy kind of slipped it in, and I really did see some, you know, some truth to that. I could tell Andy does have some interest in you and knowing how you're doing and knowing about your story, and there was some authenticness to that. If I left anything from the interview with that, like, I was actually happy with it. Like I said, I didn't, when I called into Aaron's show, I actually didn't have an intention to talk about you at all. I was trying to see how busy it was and to see if I could get through. And then I had a question about Tom O'Neill. I don't know if you heard my call. Have you heard the story about Tom O'Neill and Charles Manson? And he basically wrote a book called Chaos, and it's a theory he put together, which is backed by very good evidence. So it's only a theory just because I don't think the mainstream has portrayed it. And it's basically that the CIA has been protecting Charles Manson for a long period of time, and he had prime evidence of it when he was younger. I think he got arrested for some kind of Grand Theft Auto or car theft, and he was jailed at the time. And whoever his parole officer was subpoenaed the court to try to get him to be able to be released to go to Mexico to work some job where he was going to do soil samples. And basically the judge came back because they didn't know what was going on. And they were like, well, no, we're not going to release Charles Manson to Mexico so that he can go do some job that we've never heard of. Like, it just didn't make any sense to him. And that was one of the red flags that Tom O'Neill was able to bring up. His book is starting to catch light now, and it basically showed that he was protected by people like, I want to say Jack Pruitt was involved, and I wanted to say your relative that we've talked about, was it Harold Agnew? Might have had involvement in the program as well.
Howard Hughes.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of Harold Agnew. I do think Harold Agnew was the name that he had listed, but yeah, I remember you saying you were related to Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
But if you ever get a chance, he did a podcast on Joe Rogan as well, where he got to touch on it a little bit. And the one thing that I like about this author is you can see the whole time Joe Rogan wants to speculate and have Tom O'Neill guess about what he thought Manson did. And he goes, I'm not going to talk about anything I don't know. He goes, that would just be speculation. He goes, these are the evidence that I have. And I mean, you can make your own conclusions off of it, but these are the facts that I found. And it's a lot interesting. It's very interesting, and it's a lot different than the narrative that's been pushed about what actually happened with Charlie Manson. And he was just this, sex cult leader, just like I really think it's interesting that the people that we've touched on tonight, whether it was Aleister Crowley or me just now talking about Charles Manson, is the public push for what these people are, and then their actual involvement seems to be a different thing. Whether it's a disinformation thing for people that might have been involved with the CIA or had, abilities, like you were saying, that these programs would take advantage of. If somebody like Aleister Crowley had these abilities, just like yourself, I could see why governments would not want him to be too popular, and why they at least want to take advantage of his bloodline if it had some kind of benefit, like you were saying.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know anything about Charles Manson.
There's some interesting things there, and I do think it had some kind of basis in the MK Ultra programs, some kind of an umbrella extension of that program, and I don't know what exactly it was, but you could tell that there was definitely some key name figures that have been involved in Al Bielek's story, Andrew Basciago's story, your own story, and all of these people seem to tie back to these mind control programs, whether it's MK Ultra or something prior to that, some of the earlier versions of it. It's weird the involvement of these specialists that seem to their names seem to keep coming up in these secret programs, especially involving the CIA.
This is interesting stuff. That well, a lot of it's some of it some of it's shocking, frankly.
What do you think shocking about it? I mean, I feel like you're a man that's seen a lot of things. If you find it shocking, what's the part that surprises you?
Well, let's see. Well, it's just there's a lot about the current, especially in the political realm right now, that people take for granted as being true. But we live in such a time where things are often not what they seem. It's it really is almost like that time during the 1984 book by George Orwell, where it's like we can't trust our eyes or ears anymore. It's just it's basically like that.
It's past that.
And
These tools that we were given aren't good enough anymore. There's a cloaked close secrecy that we don't necessarily get to see, and if you're not tapped into it, I could see how it could make a big difference.
Yeah, but if you're if you have certain knowledge, like if you're aware of and have experienced some of these programs, you can kind of pick up evidence of what's really going on. And but then to prove it is near impossible, and to relate it makes you seem absolutely crazy, and could actually put you in danger.
Yeah.
So this is why
that's one thing that I've always thought was interesting about Andy's story. And I had asked Andy about this previously, and you can see it on one of Aaron's past shows, but he doesn't seem to answer it right. I was wondering if his life has ever been at risk for talking about these stories, or if he's ever had any type of threats or anything like that. And I've never seemed to notice, publicly, that he has. I mean, I don't know if he doesn't want to make it public, which is possible, or he doesn't want people to know. Or he wants to get his story out as much as possible so that if he does disappear, it'll be a thing and people will notice that he's gone. I just don't know if he's ever addressed publicly that he's had any kind of threats to his life for talking about these things. Have you yourself had any kind of threats to your life, or besides other claimants making false claims against you, or trying to discredit your story?
Well, I think
because
so.
When I say that, I use examples like Bob Lazar, who clearly almost got ran off the road at one point because he was dabbling down things that he probably didn't need to be talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think so, honestly. And I think if I'm part of this and I end up being involved in the capacity that I believe I will be, then there are likely, and there have been likely, people throughout my entire life who have been trying to sabotage what I'm doing without me even knowing what I will eventually be part of. If you understand what I mean? Because that's how time travel would obviously work. People will always have their own selfish agendas and fears and concerns and everything else. But yeah, I've had an unusual number of incidents happen to me in my lifetime that I could sort of look at and go, well, what was that really? You know what I mean? Was this an accident, or was this some kind of staged event? I have no evidence of that, but I can always suspect, and it's not beyond the realm of reasonable suspicion to think that. Um, but again, no clear evidence of that. So I just sort of go on the assumption that I don't have really anything to worry about, and I think that's probably the safest thing to do, frankly.
Do you think your father's involvement with the military helps your protection at all?
I mean, I think in the way that this stuff works, I think the military has, frankly, very little to do with it in reality, because most of this stuff is just private corporations that are so much bigger than the army or any branch of the military, as far as like wealth and access to wealth and this kind of thing, that in some ways, even now, with the growth of especially the US military in recent history, that it's still effectively like a bodyguard service to these companies. So, and I'm connected with the military and these companies. So it's kind of like, I don't really think anyone would be stupid enough to bother me to the point of anything really serious. You know, they might try to warn me or try to like discourage.
Well, so I'm gonna ask you publicly. I gotta
Mhm.
ask you publicly. You don't feel like committing suicide for any reason
No,
or anything like that. So
no.
if you happen to become missing in a little
Hey,
while,
Jake, quit trying to push a McAfee moment.
we have a public knowledge at least that you're not at risk.
No, I mean, I had some of those thoughts when I first started remembering. I started to get these Wernicke commands triggered in me, and as soon as I started remembering, I started to get ill. I got really sick, like I threw up and everything, and then after that, I started to have some kind of like suicidal thoughts, you know. But I just realized that it's like, no, this is not me. This is something affecting me to think that, and I just quickly put it out of my mind, and since then it was gone. I haven't had that. And then immediately I started to gain another memory. So it was obviously just a symptom of the Wernicke's commands. You're familiar with those, with what those are.
Mhm.
It's programming, basically hypnosis to make you avoid learning what actually happened by making you focus on something else, like a pain or fear or whatever. But those are, if you have the right kind of mind and the right kind of other training, you can really fight through them very quickly and very easily. And I haven't had that kind of problem because I have very good kind of spiritual education and training, which I think a lot of people may lack, but that might be their where they have to go as well. But again, I'm not here to like talk about my beliefs or anything. That's a personal. I just think that should be personal, and you know, everybody can pursue their own method of finding their own well-being. But that's
Exactly.
that's what works for me.
I feel like you're right. Everybody should be able to embark on their own path when it comes to religion or whatever practice it is, as long as it's not infringing on others' rights. If it's just for you and it's a personal thing, I feel like that's what religion should be. It shouldn't be a crutch that gets you through life. It shouldn't be anything else than that. It
There's a
needs,
religion that preaches that. Do as
yeah.
thou willst.
Well, I don't think the founding fathers were talking about that, but
They weren't. They had definitely some religious ties, but I don't think that was the sole purpose. They did want people to have the ability to practice free what they thought of as free will, whether it's your own religion, whether it's your own anything. they wanted you to be able to practice that freely without being infringed on. And that's something that I think the founding fathers did do.
For sure. But they didn't also want us to have the freedom to infringe upon others.
Yes.
And we're unfortunately at that point right now, I think, which is a major problem. But that is a whole other episode.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on tonight. We'll probably wrap it up here. We might as well. We're at least 2 hours in. I know we've probably been talking for longer than that, but we're probably 4 hours in as the three of us just talking. But
They call
at
us
least
2.5, but the video is just under 2 hours.
yeah, exactly. So there's a good chance that we've been going for a while.
It's
And-
1:30 in the morning here in Brazil. So yeah, it's in the middle of winter. So it's kind of chilly out here right now.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll wrap it up. If either one of you guys have any closing statements you guys want to close with, go ahead and take it away.
I don't have any. I'm hoping that I can get to share some more of this at some point. We talked about a few things I've never actually talked about other than to my wife, and she wrote them down. So they've never been uttered to anybody since that point. So, but I have a bunch of stuff. So.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, whenever you want to go through it some more, and whenever you get a chance, I'm happy to sit down with you. I want I want the full context of your story, and however we can put it out, I'm ready for it.
A little bit of remote viewing drawing there.
It'll work with the Bitcoin.
Yeah, I should put a Bitcoin symbol on there. I think that will definitely
Did put a
help.
Bitcoin signal on there.
That will definitely make the notebook 10 times more valuable in about 6 months.
Most likely.
Well, thanks again, guys. And Mike, did you have anything you want to say before we get off?
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to talk and share this with people. I hope it reaches the entire world eventually.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely will. And Michael Pena, I love when you can join in with us, and I love when we can have your commentary as well, because I think it's a great asset. It keeps us going. And did you have anything you wanted to say as well?
Something that'll probably get this thing taken down off of YouTube. Just
Jesus.
3 little words. Just 3 little words. Jesus is Lord. I'm done.
Amen to that.
That's a safe bet. We can still get away with that for a little while.
Hey, they took down my screensavers when I was working in a corporation there in the US. I was harassed for that phrase. Anytime that dude, they don't like that stuff. And I put that stuff up on other channels, and it was actually taken down for that reason. It's a war on the spirit right now, and we just all have to be aware.
Well, as long as you're not a white male Christian, you should be fine. I just
Exactly what I am, which the entire world seems to be focusing negatively on, and that's fine. They can do what they do, because I know they're all lemmings. Yeah, I don't have those down here. That's why I have my my big old machete. So, but hey, life is what it is. But yes, we are in a spiritual war. It is really profound, and it's going to affect every single being on this planet. So we're here in the meantime and enjoying what we can actually enjoy. And life is definitely going to be very, very different and soon. So enjoy the conversation with you guys. Enjoyed the perspectives and information as well. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. You guys have a good night.
You too. Talk to you soon.